I'm Cherylanne Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 364 of the Brilliant Balance podcast, and today we're talking about analysis paralysis. So listen, probably my least favorite game of all to play is this game that I refer to as paralyzed in indecision or analysis paralysis. But boy, is it a game that I play a lot. In fact, I was thinking about this recent travel experience that I had as I was getting things together today. Tell me if you've ever been in this place where you are traveling for work by yourself, and it is not one of those trips where there's like a planned group dinner, right? Like you're at a conference or something where everyone's going to dinner together. This is more solo travel. You're in town on your own. That happens to me sometimes when I'm speaking in a city other than my own. And you get to your hotel and it's been a long day. There have been a lot of logistics involved. Maybe you've had your big thing you're there for, right? The big meeting or the event, and maybe it's still coming up. But you get yourself into your room and it's like time to figure out what to have for dinner. And honestly, this used to be easy because for years and years and years when I traveled, I just ordered room service. I wasn't really that interested in being in the restaurant by myself. Every now and then I would do it, but it was like so much easier to just get room service to my room and have a meal and, pick one of the 4 things that was on the menu, right? But what's happened now, as you know, if you travel for work, is that room service has kind of faded into the background because DoorDash and other apps have taken over, right? It's just too easy to get food delivered from anywhere in the vicinity. And so why would a hotel put that kind of pressure on themselves? A few still do it, but it really seems to be a much more prevalent, option to order through one of the apps rather than dealing with the hotel. And the problem with that, of course, is that then there are so many options of what you could have for dinner, right? You're not just looking at the 4 things on the room service menu. It's like infinite choices, right? Infinite types of food. Even just the process of ordering through one of those apps stresses me out because you have to pick the genre of food, which ethnicity are we dealing with and how healthy do you want it to be and how much money do you want to spend and how long are you willing to wait? It's like 65 decisions just to get a salad in front of you at dinner time. So this particular evening, I am in this hotel just changing my mind and rethinking what would be a better option and how do I want to feel the next day and what do I really feel like eating? And, I am scrolling through multiple food ordering apps, some of which I didn't even have an account for, but it seemed like a good idea to open one, and sort of every now and then catching myself and thinking like, do I even want to do this? Is this even worth it? By the time it gets here, am I even going to feel like eating? And ultimately on that particular trip, I just gave up. I was like, I'm not even doing this. I can't even make a decision. So just forget it. And I think I had like a bar in my, briefcase for the day and was like, I'll just eat this. Not a great ending, right? To the story. And the only reason that it doesn't have a great ending is because there were just too many options. And I am not bad at making decisions. I can make decisions most of the time, but even small decisions can start to feel sort of monumental when you're already juggling a really high cognitive load, right? And for those of us who sort of chronically live in that state where we have careers and families and outside involvements in the community, the weight of these seemingly small decisions can really sometimes push us over the edge. And we can get to a place where we enter what is commonly called analysis paralysis, right? This is that state of overthinking where instead of making a decision, we just get stuck and we don't make a decision at all. And that can actually lead us to a place of inaction where a non-decision, right, becomes the decision. And I think this actually hits high achievers even harder because high achievers have a daily barrage of decisions, right? You're in positions of power, you're in leadership roles. And so making big decisions and small decisions, both at work and at home, really can amp up the overall mental load that we're carrying from day to day. And the pressure to make the right choice in every one of those domains can really increase mental fatigue. Right. And so that gets to this place where there's like kind of a low grade level of mental exhaustion because our brains get overstimulated from having that constant stream of really complex decisions, right? And in those situations, even minor choices like what you're going to order for dinner, right? Or which email to deal with next can start to feel overwhelming, and we just feel ourselves shutting down. So I thought it would be good to look today at some of the causes of analysis paralysis, what really kind of gets us to this place, and then what can we do to address the issue if we want to get more freedom and we want to make faster, better, right, more informed decisions. Because at the end of the day, making decisions expeditiously, right, and with a level of confidence is one of the ways that we can really increase our output. We can get more done, we can influence more if we're able to make clear-minded decisions. So let's look at a few of the causes of this state of affairs, which, by the way, is definitely getting worse, right? I think the prevalence of analysis paralysis is getting worse. And the first reason is we just have too many choices across kind of multiple domains, right? It has like an exponential multiplier effect. When you think about your life, you're probably managing multiple roles simultaneously. You're leading something at work, a department, the whole company, right? Some piece of the organization. You are leading, I'm sure, a lot of the decision making at home, whether you're a parent or not. And maybe you have a role or 2 or 10 in the community that you're in a leadership position where every one of those is demanding its own set of decisions. And, when I just think about how many decisions I make in a day, like at work, it's hundreds, right? I mean, dozens for sure. And in some days, I bet if we really broke it down, there would be hundreds of micro decisions. And then you're doing the same thing at home, right? And then making choices between those domains. Like, do I go to this school event or do I go to this work meeting? Or even deciding, what you're going to do in any given week to take care of yourself and where you're going to schedule that in. Just the sheer volume of choices that exist across multiple domains can be exhausting. And I think every one of those places is increasing at its own rate. Like, think about shopping, right? On, God forbid, a place like Amazon, right? Which I have such a love-hate relationship with Amazon. So helpful to be able to get literally anything I want with the click of a button, sometimes within the same day. But also the choices. I mean, how many options do we need for some of these items that we're trying to buy? And it just makes me feel like I want to buy more than one so that I can make sure I have the right one. So the vast number of options that exist, picking a piece of software at work, there used to be like one option to get a particular task done. And now we have to look at the pros and cons across entire suites of software and, various features that have been prioritized or not prioritized by the various providers of these pieces of software. And then do we want to change the software once we already have it? How do we want to use it? Are we optimizing all the use cases for the software? It's just seemingly infinite in the number of choices and decisions that we're trying to make. And I think it can cause us to put blinders on and really try it inadvertently shut out decisions that we really should be considering, should be looking at, because there's just so many in the everyday routines that we're already a part of. So too many choices, right, is a big cause of this analysis paralysis. Another one that I think is causal is a tendency toward perfectionism, right? Just the fear of making the wrong choice or a very strong desire to get it right, to get it really right or like exactly right. Many, many high achieving women have internalized a need for perfection, whether it's in our professional roles or our societal expectations, in our families and beyond. And making decisions always means that we're leaving behind a set of options, right? We're closing the door on other decisions in order to make this one. So you're losing out on the option that you didn't choose. And for someone who's really driven by a need for perfection or a need to get it right, that loss of an option can feel monumental, right? It raises the stakes. The stakes just feel really high, and that can keep us in an indecision mode because we're trying to keep our options open. My oldest daughter and I talk about this all the time because she really identified that this is a pattern I'm prone to, where I like to keep my options open, right? If something better comes along, or if I find a better way to optimize it and I have my options open for a while, that feels really good to me. And she prefers to get the decision made and get it behind her because she likes certainty a whole bunch. So, the kind of opposing desire for certainty and having your options open can cause you to stay in the tension in between those things for a long time. And the result is, hours of pros and cons lists or rethinking options, right? And doubting ourselves before we can move forward, if we move forward at all. So think about how much time you've invested in not just the first pros and cons list, because that can be a healthy thing, but doing them over and over, or redoing them, expanding them, trying to make sure that we haven't missed anything. Saying to yourself, I just want to rethink this. I want to think about this some more. We think and think and think until we're just exhausted. And what's underneath that is just this nagging sense of self-doubt that we're going to get it wrong. So the perfectionism pattern can really slow us down or bring us to a halt altogether. And then the third thing that I think is in the mix here is the really high cognitive load that comes from multitasking, right? The brain can only handle so much before it goes into cognitive overload. And when we are shifting rapidly between tasks, right? Like you're making a series of decisions at work and a series of decisions need to be made at home. I can just picture you sitting there with your phone in one hand, right? Or like propped up on your desk and your laptop open and a couple of screens going. And every one of those is asking you to make decisions, right? The texts are coming in about who's driving carpool and can I stay later after school and can you take me to this and can I do this thing on Friday night? At least that's what my phone looks like, right, during the day. And one screen has a bunch of Slack channels that are highlighted because every single one of those has something you need to weigh in on. And another screen is open. And in my case, that would be monday.com for project management. And a lot of those are requiring approvals or decisions. So we're actually sitting at like almost this dashboard or like cockpit of decisions that need to be made. And that lands like a ton of bricks. That is a really heavy cognitive load because we're task switching among all of those elements all day long. So that high cognitive load can cause us to just eventually, we just hit the ceiling, right? Or the wall. It's like we're done for the moment or for the day or for the week or for the season. And then no mas, we are not making more decisions. Hey, are you an entrepreneur looking to take your business to the next level? I want to introduce you to the Prosperity Playbook. This is your ultimate guide to building a more profitable and sustainable business. The Prosperity Playbook has been designed for business owners like you who are ready to transform their financial future. With step-by-step guidance, practical tools, and expert advice, you'll gain the confidence and control that you need to master your business finances. Just imagine having a clear roadmap to achieve your financial goals with insights that help you make smarter decisions and grow your business with ease. Whether you're just starting out or looking to scale, the Prosperity Playbook has got you covered. And here's the best part. As a Brilliant Balance listener, you can get lifetime access to the playbook for just $199. Unlock the secrets to financial success and join a whole community of empowered entrepreneurs. So don't wait. Visit theprosperityplaybook.com/brilliant balance. It's linked in the show notes and start your journey to prosperity today. Remember, your business deserves to thrive. And with the Prosperity Playbook, it will. So when you find that maybe by the time you get home at night and someone says, what's for dinner? You're like, right? Don't ask me what's for dinner. Or your kids are asking you to make a series of more decisions. And you're like, I cannot think about this right now. That is your brain telling you like enough, right? We've hit the max on cognitive load. and you need to do something to clear your cache, kind of get your brain emptied out so that you can start again. And we all have different rituals for doing that and how we do it. But when you do it, it will give you back the kind of headspace that you need to start making decisions. So those three things that, we have too many choices available to us in general, where we veer toward perfectionistic or a strong fear of making the wrong choice, right? We really want to get it just right. And then we have this overall high cognitive load that's driven by constant multitasking. Those are three of the primary causes of this analysis paralysis, especially among, high achieving women. So what do we do? Right? What do we do if we're like, we got to get better at this so that we don't shut down? Making good, clear-minded decisions is so important that we have to find ways to do it. And I'm going to talk about a couple. I'm sure there's more than this, right? I'm sure you can think of more. I'm going to give you 4 to talk about or to think about. The first is find ways to limit your options, right? In a world where you're constantly being bombarded by choices, we have to make the choice making easier. So if you're looking at, all right, what am I going to order for dinner in the hotel example that I was giving before, just deciding like, I'm only going to look at this one restaurant. I know it's nearby. I saw it when I was driving to the hotel. I'm going to pick something from that menu, right? Or if there is a limited room service menu, like that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to narrow it down to this smaller set of options. Anything that makes the choice making easier is helpful. Even at home, if you're thinking like, well, what am I going to make for dinner? And you start finding, I'll be getting out my Pinterest boards and my various apps that have recipes in them. And I have a massive cookbook collection and, I want to look at all those things. But what I do during the week to make it easier is I just kind of preset a few dinner plans. They're already made. I know exactly what I'm having on Tuesday because it's a busy night. I'm not going to start looking at options, right? I'm going to have a very limited set of things that I already have the ingredients for and I'm definitely going to make. In your professional life, maybe you can limit the number of decisions that you are making by delegating more to other people, giving the decision-making authority to someone on your team. And so just saying like, these are the decisions that are going to be my level, and I am giving you permission to make these other decisions kind of has multiple positive effects, but one of them is you get some headspace freed up, right? And it actually can be valuable as kind of a postscript on this idea of limiting your options to have certain blocks of time where you make high priority decisions, which really gives you some room for clearer thinking. Perhaps first thing in the morning, if you come in and you're really clear-minded when you're starting your day, if you've got a couple of things that have to be evaluated and they really matter, that could be a great time to be like, I'm going to make this decision before I do anything else. So things that help you limit your options and kind of contain the decisions and get them boiled down to a few choices that you can really trust is helpful. I think also using your team at work to help you limit your options, or even your team at home. I was talking with someone recently and she was saying that they needed to get new car insurance for her family. And she said her husband was looking at options and bringing to her like, okay, which one of these do you want to go with? And yes, it would be great if they would just make the decision, right? That would be great. But even getting it narrowed down to like, I think it's one of these two can be helpful, right? So anything we can do to leverage the people in our households or the people on our teams to help bring us recommendations like, hey, I've looked at all the options for project management software at work. This is the one I think we should go with, and here's why, will really help lower your cognitive load. So limiting options. All right, second thing would be giving yourself a deadline for decisions. Often, we will want to weigh every single option before we make a decision, and we'll want to really feel like we've done our due diligence. How often have you heard yourself say like, I just need to think about it, right? It would be irresponsible for me to make this decision quickly. But is that true? Is it really true that it would be irresponsible? What it really does is it increases the cognitive load. It's like, I want you to picture if you picked up a weight in your hand, maybe like a 15-pound or a 20-pound hand weight, something, that's like, I can hold this for a while. But if I asked you to hold it for like 15 minutes without putting it down, it would become very, very heavy. And that's how decisions work. The longer we are holding them in our mind, like the heavier they become. They just kind of take on a life of their own. So having deadlines for decisions can be very helpful. Just telling yourself, this is the container, right? I've got 2 days to make this decision. I'm not going to get more sure after 2 days. Or for a smaller thing, like I'm going to give myself 10 minutes and I'm going to decide which version of this bronzer I am buying at Sephora, right? Because boy, that can take on a life of its own if we're not careful. So really be clear that setting a deadline for decision prevents the decision making from dragging on, which really protects your mental energy for the next task at hand. Third thing is practicing mindful breathing or just taking a break. I mentioned earlier, sometimes you have to clear your cache, right? Like your mental cache. When you're juggling work and home and all the other things, your brain can stay in like a constant state of overstimulation. And when we're overstimulated, we just don't make great decisions. It's harder to make them. So thinking about mindfulness practices like just a few simple deep breaths, right? Or a body scan can really help if you find yourself spiraling into indecision. Like if I feel myself spinning, just kind of spinning out on option analysis, I'll take a minute to get away from my desk. And I almost need to like not think about it at all before I come back. And sometimes by the time I return to my desk, there's like the decision has been made. It's so clear to me. It's like you tap a different part of yourself. And we can get really in sort of the driven approach to this decision making. We can be like, we're going to make our pros and cons lists and we're going to set a goal and a deadline and it really matters and everything's quantitative. Or we can sort of step back and touch base with our intuition and say, what do I think is the right answer here? And if you're willing to trust that, and it can really be a shortcut to faster decisions. And then the fourth idea that can help with this analysis paralysis is to have a little bit of a system around recurring decisions, right? Lots of kind of famous high achievers have talked about systems. Steve Jobs kind of famously, right, wore the same thing every day. Many high achievers are really spending unnecessary mental energy on recurring decisions. And so thinking about things that sort of automate or routinize some of the recurring decisions can help. I have a number of clients who leverage a rotating meal plan. Not something that I do personally because I view cooking as a creative outlet and it's a process that I like to introduce variety to. But a rotating meal plan absolutely is one of these examples that can work. Some people have preset outfits for work. Like this is a 2-week rotation. And if you're really particular, even like an 11-day rotation, because then they're not happening on the same days of the week, right? So this is 11 outfits. I wear these 11 outfits in order. And I am not kidding. This is a real example. This happens, right? And it just says, I am just moving through these for this season. How many times do you go through an 11-day outfit rotation, even if they're just combinations of some of the same pieces, right? In a given season before the season is over and you're moving on? Not very many, right? So figuring that out kind of once per season is helpful. Thinking about the order in which you start your day, workout schedules that are routinized, right? So the more time that you can sort of pull out of the decision, that frees up the cognitive resources for other more important decisions. The low stakes ones are the ones we want to really reduce the number of that we have to make. Just getting things kind of on autopilot. What you have for breakfast, right, is a great example. Plenty of women that I work with are like, yeah, I eat the same thing for breakfast literally every day, or I have one of two options. And it just means I don't have to think about that, right? I already know what works for me. I know I feel good. I know I stay satisfied. Like, great, check the box. And save the decisions for the places where it matters to you more. So hopefully this is helpful. I'm kind of thinking back on what we covered in this episode. I want to just acknowledge the reality of the high cognitive load, right? If you are feeling like, oh my gosh, why do I get so paralyzed when it's time to make decisions? It's because it makes sense that you would, right? It makes sense that you would get paralyzed given just how high the cognitive load is across the multiple spheres of life that you're operating in, right? Often carrying with it the weight, the added weight of perfectionism and overwhelm. And so when you do these things like limiting your choices or setting deadlines or introducing some breaks, for mindfulness into your day and having some systems for recurring decisions, you really can reduce this, which lets you have a little bit more ease in how you move through your day. Okay. So I guess the key takeaway is you don't need to be perfect. You don't even need to be a perfect decision maker, right? But by making some of these decisions faster, even if they aren't perfect, you free yourself up from the paralysis. And most importantly, you make a decision, right? It gets you to a place where you're making an intentional decision and not just letting time go by and your paralysis make the decision for you. So taking action, right? Making a decision, even an imperfect one, is so much better than staying paralyzed in indecision. So I hope this is helpful. And if it is, I would love to hear from you. I say this every now and then in the podcast. It is so great when you send me comments about a particular episode that really struck a chord with you, or when you write a review of the show overall. I've been having lots of conversations lately about Bold, and the women in those conversations are so generously sharing in their interviews, like, hey, I've been a podcast listener for a while and I really love the show. And then they'll reference episodes. And I love hearing that. It's so gratifying when I do this work every week to hear how it's landing for you. So if you are a regular listener of the show, and you've never had a chance to rate the show or leave a review, it is so helpful. It's like fun for me to read them, and also really helpful for new listeners and people trying to discover the show. It really does help it gain some visibility for them. Also, I love it when you share the show with your friends and colleagues and family members who might benefit. So if today's episode or any of the recent ones really struck a chord with you and you would be so kind as to share it with someone else that you think might love it, that is always something that I'm so grateful for as well. So thank you for tuning in today. That is all I have for you in this episode. Till next time, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.